No, they really haven't. And one of the problems we have is that we don't really know who was driving the train last year. Last year's free agency and the whole offseason in general, they were looking for bargain guys. They got a bunch of really good special teams pickups. They didn't go for Jarrett's Burt. They went for Malcolm Jenkins. It ended up being a good signing for them, but the guy everybody was talking about was the guy that signed with the Saints, which freed up Malcolm Jenkins. But we don't know exactly who was sort of, driving that process. And nobody from the organization has spoken to any of us since all this upheaval in the front office has taken place. So it's going to be fascinating to see. Once they start actually having to do something, when free agency opens and there's actual moves to be made, that's when we'll really start to get a handle on what is Chip Kelly's way of doing things. What is his approach? Last year at this time, I remember about this week last year writing a bunch of stories about them re-signing Riley Cooper and Jason Kelsey, Jason Peters. Jeremy Maclin did a one-year deal. They were locking up all their own guys this time last year. So far this week, nothing's happened. So I don't know if that's Kelly's plan or they're about to announce some news. I mean, we don't know what the deal really is until they start to do something. And so far, it's been very quiet from them.
It really has been. And a couple of things to follow up on that, Phil. Number one, nobody is speaking. And obviously, there's a lot for this team to kind of talk about with the whole restructuring of that front office. Do you find it peculiar that there is nobody speaking? And do you think that they owe it to people to come out and explain what has gone on with this franchise it's not like this team's won 5 games over the last couple of seasons. They've won 10 games this year, and yet nobody's talking.
Yeah, I think they do. And, I mentioned this on Twitter the other day, and, you get people jumping you because I think the average fan sees reporters or media people commenting on this. They think it's just all about us, and it isn't. I personally, I can go until April without chatting with Chip Kelly personally. It doesn't really matter to me. I spent quite enough time with Chip Kelly during the season. I like being around him. He's an enjoyable guy to talk to, but I don't get anything, personally from this. It is our job as reporters and media people to get information from the team and figure out what's going on around the team and convey that to the people who pay all of our salaries, starting with the media and then the much higher salaries that the coaches and GMs and players make. So, yes, I do believe that the team has not really been particularly fair to its fan base over the last month and a half, 2 months, by basically being completely quiet. I mean, 29 of the teams either had a coach or an executive or both talk at the scouting combine in Indianapolis last week. The 3 that didn't, the New England Patriots, New Orleans Saints, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, the Patriots just won the Super Bowl, and they've won a couple along the way. Saints won the Super Bowl a couple years ago. The Eagles have never won a Super Bowl. I mean, there's a little bit of a difference in the status of those organizations. You can carry yourself like one of the prestigious top organizations if you want to, but you better prove it on the field and back it up if you're going to carry that off. That's always been my feeling about it. Most teams feel it's important to talk to their fans and let them know what's going on and what the thinking is and what's happening. If every other team in the NFL is stupid, then I'd like to know how they, including some teams that beat the Eagles. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers beat the Eagles, Arizona Cardinals beat the Eagles, Green Bay Packers beat the Eagles. All those teams had people talking at the combine last week. Eagles had nobody talking. So, it shows a kind of arrogance or a cluelessness, and I'm not sure which it is, on Kelly's part. And, Jeff Lurie, a couple of years ago, went on the record and said, one of the reasons he was unhappy with the way things were going is he didn't like the way the organization was being portrayed and being perceived out in the public, and he wanted people to talk more. He wanted he wanted Andy Reid to be more forthcoming in his press conferences. He wanted Joe Banner to be more out there at the time. A couple of years later, he's giving complete, cone of silence treatment, and it's, we're right back to the worst of that era. And the thing about Chip that's frustrating is when he talks, he's really good. He's really helpful. He's really informative. He's really, seems honest. But when he's not talking, it's just you're forced to speculate and wonder for yourself, and that does not answer fans' questions.
It really doesn't, Phil. And Phil Sheridan's with us, ESPN.com's NFL Nation, covering the Eagles, which is interesting because the Eagles seem to be in the center of just about every big name out there in free agency, one Byron Maxwell, and in the draft. Many people believe that they are going to do whatever possible to get Marcus Mariota. Was there evidence of that at the Combine this weekend? And I thought you just said something interesting. Do people look at them as stupid or dumb? I mean, if Chip Kelly wants so badly to get his hands on this guy, why would other teams be willing to deal with Philadelphia and say, yeah, sure, your offense is very good without your hand-picked guy. Let me just give you the guy you want. To me, that is the biggest hang up in all of this, which what team would want to deal with Philly knowing they're giving them the guy that he really wants more than anything?
Well, there's a couple of things in play there. It's interesting. It's a fascinating topic. It really is. But what happens in these cases is the other team thinks, well, if they believe you would have to be kind of down on Mariota or not sold on Mariota at least, or have such a good quarterback that you didn't care to be willing to trade a pick to the Eagles. So if you're a team like, Washington or Oakland, who are the teams being speculated about in these mock drafts that Peter King and Pat Kerwin just did, if you're one of those teams and you don't think Marcus Mariota is a franchise quarterback, then you're more than happy to give that guy to somebody else because somebody else is going to get a not franchise quarterback and you're going to get a haul in return. Washington a couple of years ago, they made the deal to take RG3. They moved up from whatever 6 to 2 to pick, and they gave up 3 first-round picks altogether and a second-round pick to move up 5 spots or 4 spots to get that guy. To be the team that can get they can get some of that back from the Eagles, from a division rival. This is for a quarterback that they don't believe is a franchise guy. If you believe that, then you think you're hurting the Eagles long term, and you're helping yourself by getting a lot of value in return. So it is a complicated one because even people who think that Mariota might not be a fit for them kind of think he's pretty good in the Oregon offense, and the Oregon offense is a Chip Kelly offense. I mean, it's a little different here. Kelly tailors it to his quarterbacks. And he has not had, with Nick Foles and Mark Sanchez, he did not have a Marcus Mariota type of quarterback running around out there. So it was theoretically, give Kelly a chance to really open his playbook and make the Eagles that much more dangerous. That's how the Eagles and people who like Mariota see it. But people who think Mariota is not going to be a franchise guy, then they think the Eagles are, making a fool's deal and they want to be the beneficiaries of that deal.
Phil, over at ESPN.com's NFL Nation, that you wrote that Jameis Winston helps himself and in the process helped the Eagles there. Why was Winston's weekend very good for Philly if you're watching the two quarterbacks?
Well, I really think it's pretty clear that Tampa Bay is going to take a quarterback, and they have the first pick in the draft. Nobody can do anything to stop Tampa Bay from doing what they want to do with that pick. So if Mariota is a guy that they like and they're intrigued by, but Winston's also there. And if Winston comes out and he, spits all over himself and he acts like a jerk and people are ripping him and you come away thinking this guy is an embarrassment, then Tampa Bay is suddenly going, well, maybe we can't take him with the first pick and maybe we can sell that to our fans. Maybe we go to Mariota. So by having Winston do everything he can do and look very good doing it in public and give Tampa Bay every reason to take him, that gives the Eagles a chance at least. I mean, they don't have they have only a slim chance as it is. Tennessee could still go ahead and take Mariota and put all this to rest too. But if Tampa Bay decides Winston's going off the board for the non-field, off the field issues and the non-football issues, then Mariota's probably going to Tampa Bay. So that wipes the Eagles out and everybody else out as well.
Phil Sheridan's with us looking at the Eagles offseason. You mentioned before this week last year was a very interesting week. I remember it vividly. They signed the one-year deal with Jeremy Maclin. They also signed Cooper, as you chronicled. That was also right around this time the speculation of Deshaun Jackson's future because of those signings around him. The obvious question then would be LaShawn McCoy in that deal. You get any sense that people are bringing McCoy's name up more so just because of the obvious instance with Deshaun Jackson and that big contract, or do you think there's something to be said that the Eagles might want to move on from McCoy at this stage of the game?
All I can see is that it's well, there's 2 points on there. One is that, the thing happened with Deshaun Jackson last year, so people are on their radars out a little bit more for what Chip Kelly might do. And his salary cap number is really high just for this 1 year. It goes down after this year. It's not that big a deal after this. So in that sense, I think it's probably not going to really change his standing very much. The other thing is that he did not have a great year. The offensive line was obviously part of the problem. But if you look at Pro Football Focus, which is basically reviews tape and grades every player on every play in the whole league, they had LaShawn McCoy listed as a bad player. They had 4 categories they broke everything down into, from elite down to bad. And they had McCoy and Riley Cooper and Bradley Fletcher for the Eagles as the bad players on their team. I mean, they were basing that on, how McCoy ran, what he did, in terms of, what angles he took, what holes he ran through, what moves he made. They were, they graded without, they kind of factor in the offensive line as a problem here, but what does the player do? And so if they, and teams will actually use their stuff. And I'm not sure the Eagles do, but some teams do. So they're pretty well respected. They're not like just a bunch of guys, off the street saying whatever they say. They're pretty well respected. And they had McCoy down as a bad player. And all I can say is that if the Eagles coaches had the same take, looked at the film and said, boy, the line wasn't great here, but the running back really killed us. There's a chance that's going on. We don't know that, and they'll never say anything until the actual move gets made. But that is the possibility. For me, watching it, I look at it as close as I could. I understand what Pro Football Focus is saying in that regard, but I look at last year and I look at his career, and I look at there were enough injuries on the offensive line to kind of say, this was just an off year for him, for all those reasons. I think he's still a pretty good player. Kelly gave him the ball enough and has relied on him enough for the first 2 years that I can't believe that he's completely sour on him that fast. I just don't think that doesn't look to me like what's going on. It could be happening, but I'll be surprised.
Yeah, well, you wonder how much value he has around the league to see if this whole Mariota thing, if McCoy would play a role in helping that happen. Would he be willing to part with his running back in order to get a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get Marcus Mariota and he's going to be the quarterback for the next 10 years or whatever, then it would help to have a running game, and it would help Marcus Mariota's transition to the NFL to have a good running game. I think there's a school of thought that a lot of what McCoy was able to do last year and even this year, his numbers weren't terrible this year. A lot of that is because the offense is going to be successful running the ball. They're committed to it. They do it. The blocking schemes are good. The offensive line is good when it's healthy. That you could probably, it's kind of like the conversation we're having in Dallas about DeMarco Murray right about now. There's a school of thought that the Cowboys are willing to let DeMarco Murray leave as a free agent because as great a year as he had, they believe that their offensive line is the reason they had it. And if you feel that way about LaShawn McCoy, if you're the Eagles, you think you can plug in another running back and be just almost as productive or nearly as productive, then having a good running game would be an important element to having Marcus Mariota feel comfortable, take some of the pressure off him if he were to come in here. But would you sacrifice the guy who maybe have 2 or 3 years left for the long term? You've seen what your team with LaShawn McCoy has been able to accomplish for the last 6 years, which is basically not very much in terms of postseason. It's the thinking is you got to get that quarterback to really have a chance in the postseason, which I kind of believe. And if you believe that Marcus Mariota can be that kind of quarterback, then you would probably move on with anybody on the team to get to that point.
Phil Sheridan, ESPN.com's NFL Nation. The Eagles also have a decision that a lot of people thought this was a slam dunk about Jeremy Maclin. where do you stand on Maclin? Is this going to be as easy as it seems? To me, it's very interesting because of the amount of talent on this market. So some of these guys are going to get franchised, which means other teams might have to say, look, we'll overpay because we need to get a guy. Do you think Maclin is as a slam dunk as it maybe once was perceived, Phil?
Well, I would think if it was a slam dunk, it would be in the net by now. You know what I mean? He was talking like it was a slam dunk. In fact, I was actually looking up the story from last year. The day he signed his one-year deal last year, he was coming off the ACL, and he wanted to do a one-year deal. And we were asking him about it, were you looking for a long-term deal? And he said, as far as I'm concerned, this is a long-term deal. I mean, he was saying last year the one-year deal was just a placeholder to get him, into a position where he could make the kind of money he thought he could make, with a healthy knee and a good season behind him. He didn't want to take a little less market value last year and regret it because he outplayed the contract. So he took the one-year deal and believed that would be the stepping stone to a long-term deal with Philadelphia. I mean, everything that Maclin has said sounds like he plans to come back and wants to come back. But part of the game is that his agent, he changed agents. His agent left the agency. Ben Doger was his former agent, who's now all involved in the Adrian Peterson story. So that guy is not at the same agency anymore. So Tom Condon and his team are the agents of record for Jeremy Maclin. And, it's possible that a different agent would take a different approach. They have to start from square one again and kind of build that, that whole, kind of dialogue that they've already had with the previous agent. That could all be, in the mix. But it is possible that he's decided, hey, I'll just wait and see what free agency, get to the market and see what happens. I mean, what if Andy Reid just, calls up and says, hey, we'll pay you, 20% more than you were willing to pay you because we really need a wide receiver. And, he knows the offense, he knows the coach, he knows the coaches. It's a comfortable situation. It's at home. He's from Missouri. I mean, there's all that stuff, you can't possibly discount it, but my guess would, if I was putting money down, I would still put it down on Jeremy Maclin returning because that's everything that he said. This guy is not simply a guy that's playing games, but the fact that it hasn't happened yet is certainly caused a raise in eyebrow.
Phil, obviously, Byron Maxwell, the corner, they need help in the secondary, but some suggest $10 million annually. Do you think that would be the number one target for this team to go find a corner? And are they willing to break the bank that much money to bring in a corner who may or may not be a number one level guy?
That's a really good question. I mean, there was some talk coming out of the combine that the Eagles and maybe the Jets are going to be the top players for Byron Maxwell. And I mean, it's possible. The one that we're not privy to, obviously, is, internally, what do the Eagles think of this guy? And what do they think of their own guys? I mean, they kept playing, Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher all year. So, the only evidence we have is that they weren't that unhappy with the way they were playing. Do they think Maxwell is that kind of guy? I don't know. We won't know until they get to free agency and they start making moves. There are a bunch of, cornerbacks who are in the 27, 28-year-old range with similar experience who are the right height. There are guys like that are available. Parrish Cox from San Francisco is one. I can't think of off the top of my head the kid from San Diego. There's another one. There's Kareem Jackson in Houston. So there's a couple, cornerbacks like that. Who all seem like roughly the same type, roughly the same experience, still well under 30. If you're the Eagles and you have your grades and all these guys, they may have Byron Maxwell, third or fourth. We don't know what they see when they look at the tape. And they may like one of these other guys better or think they're a better scheme fit. So it may be that, that Maxwell is because he's been in that secondary in Seattle and gotten a lot of attention for that. And, rightfully so. They've been very good. And he's been underpaid for that kind of play. So far in his career, he may be a guy that's going to be the number one guy on the market. But there's a couple of players that,